Hello everybody and welcome to my presentation. I am Anne-Laurence, CHT, registered by the GHR in England and also a member of the Past Life Therapy Association, the Association of Nouvelle Hypnose in France and the International Association of Counseling Hypnotherapists in Canada, Vancouver. I'm very happy to be here in Sydney after an absence of 21 years. And I'm very pleased to be able to share with you all this data on modern Ericksonian hypnosis and psychobiology of mind-body healing, which I will call therapeutic hypnosis for short, and which I use in my practice as a hypnotherapist in Réunion and teach to health professionals in Réunion and France. I haven't had the chance to talk in English on a regular basis for quite a number of years now, so please bear with my poor English and accent. For those who may not know where Réunion is, this small overseas French department is very close to Mauritius, about 30 minutes flight, and about 700 km east of Madagascar. Even though Réunion is a very small island of nearly 2,600 square kilometers, it has nearly 900,000 people living on it. I've been living in Réunion for about 16 years and it has been very interesting and enriching in my practice as a hypnotherapist, given that there are very different ethnies, Malagasy, Indian, Chinese, African, European, many different cultural trends, religious faith, Catholic, Muslim, Buddhist, Hindu, to name a few, and various ways of living, all these differences which I have had to get familiar to in order to include and use in my hypnotherapy sessions, and that have made me a much more open, understanding, and respectful practitioner. So today I will be talking about the main theme of my speech, which is modern Ericksonian hypnosis and psychobiology of mind-body healing. This is a diagram of the way I will go about presenting you with all this material. Some of it, mainly the scientific data, is copyright, for which I have obtained the official permission from Ernest Rossi to reproduce within the framework of my professional teaching and for this conference. I will do my best to be as coherent and clear in my limited English. First, I will give you a brief description of conventional hypnosis, Ericksonian hypnosis, and modern Ericksonian hypnosis. Then I will get into more details about the psychobiology of mind-body healing in therapeutic hypnosis, followed by corroborative scientific data, after which I will be talking about what healing involves and will end with some case stories in my professional practice as a hypnotherapist. I will be talking about 2 cases of cancer and 1 case of Guillain Barre Syndrom. If time permits, and if you're interested, I will give a short demo with a volunteer in your group. So, to start with, conventional hypnosis is directive, commanding. The subconscious is not necessarily considered as a friend. It can be considered as an obstacle to reaching goals that needs to be told to behave differently. Conventional hypnosis can be very useful in dealing with problems like addictions and other problems. I find it works best with people who don't mind being told what to do. I use this form of hypnosis in past life therapy as it is very important to communicate with the patient and know what's going on and be able to lead the work safely or on the way out of hypnosis if the patient feels frightened or stuck. The hypnotherapist needs to be a leading helping hand in this type of work. On the other hand, Ericksonian hypnosis is open, non-directive. It gives choice, trusts the patient's inner capacity to find solutions. The subconscious is considered as a resourceful friend. The language of the subconscious is used via metaphors, and positive stories are told and allowed to open to new possibilities and new avenues. For those who might not know about Milton Erickson, It was in the early 1950s that he reintroduced hypnosis into the therapeutic field as open, non-directive hypnosis techniques. Milton Erickson was an American psychiatrist. He died in 1980. And he not only suffered from a very early age of various troubles, dyslexia and color blindness, but also survived from a polio stroke at the age of 17, which left numerous and painful after effects. He very soon understood the relativity of sensory perception and developed an extraordinary sense of observation. Milton Erickson discovered hypnosis through his medical studies. His innovative approach lied on the certitude that the patient had the inner resources to respond in new ways to the situations he encountered by using his own skills and personal adaptation means. As a pragmatic, Milton Erickson based his approach on disconcerting communication. For nearly half a century, Milton Erickson played a predominant part in renewing the field of hypnosis, to which he gave a new noble spirit in the United States. Ericksonian hypnosis showed that a subject is capable of finding a personal creative answer to rapidly solve his problem, which led to brief therapy and strongly influenced the creators of neurolinguistic programming, NLP. Ericksonian hypnosis is a very efficient way, I find, to avoid resistance, as the patient can choose or not choose the indirect suggestions. It works very well with people who don't like being told what to do. In Ericksonian hypnosis, hypnosis is considered as a bridge that allows the conscious mind to have access to the resources of the unconscious, which is not the case in pathological state, in which the conscious no longer has access to the unconscious mind and to the subconscious resources. To Milton Erickson, the individual is important. Everyone can do better, and each one of us has unique possibility to develop. Positive stories give patients the chance to become aware of new possibilities that they are free to accept or reject, consciously or unconsciously. Now, modern Ericksonian hypnosis is all this, plus it includes NLP techniques, which were derived from Ericksonian hypnosis, and energy techniques. We call it Nouvelle Hypnose in French. It is solution-oriented therapy. It takes into account the values and belief system of the client, his motivations, interests, identity. It is respectful of the person's unique way of dealing with this problem. And according to the openness and ways of the person, of an individual person, energy techniques can be included in the hypnosis session, like using both hands to observe the exploration being done on a conscious or unconscious level, harmonizing the chakras through the image of light going through the body from the top of the head, or feeling soft vibration, harmonizing the energy meridians, or light spreading through the body, cleaning and regenerating deeply the body. Now, over to my main subject of the day, which is the psychobiology of mind-body healing used in therapeutic hypnosis. I will be talking about Ernest Rossi's healing mentor, the ultradian healing cycle, the symptom being considered as a friend, the dialogue between the mind, brain, and genes, the dialogue taking place between the hippocampus and the cortex, the four-stage creative process, and I'll end up with Rossi's metaphorical healing tree and rehabilitation. The Palo Alto School, as well as some of Erickson's students, including Ernest Rossi, who, by the way, was Milton Erickson's closest collaborator during his past 8 years of living, continued his work and generated a significant renewal within the field of psychosomatics. Rossi did significant work in this field thanks to the progress and studies of neurobiology, which is the research on neurotransmitters linking the body and the mind. More recently, psychoneuroimmunology has brought the scientific foundation to this new approach, which was essentially empirical until then. Rossi would say the mind and body represent two aspects of one sole and same system of information, and that is life. Without getting into too much scientific detail, the main element of this new progress is information and its processing. Psychology, biology, physics, genetics, and any other human approach have the same common denominator, and that is information. To Ernest Rossi, Milton Erickson was a healing mentor. He used to tell him stories about his efforts at self-rehabilitation from his lifetime of coping with polio, which Ernest Rossi remembered vividly when he was recovering from a stroke much later in his life. Life, Milton Erickson would explain, actually is a continuous process of rehabilitation. Every day and every moment that we consciously choose to work cheerfully and creatively with our handicap, whatever it might be, rather than complain, literally gives us a leg up. Getting in and out of an auto, he explained, can be utilized as another opportunity to gain yet another increment of muscle coordination and strength. This view was the essence of what he called his naturalistic or utilization approach, which Ernest Rossi nowadays calls the symptom path to enlightenment, whereby the process of actively coping with our symptoms and problems guides us and facilitates physical healing as well as further psychological development. In therapeutic hypnosis, the symptom or problem is seen as a friend rather than an enemy. The patient's attitude to their symptoms and to themselves is extremely important during this form of regenerating hypnosis. Your symptom is a signal that creative change is necessary in your life. Your symptom or problem is actually a friend to you. It's like exploring what's behind the symptom, what's hidden behind the tree hiding in the forest. Now I'm going to talk about the dialogue taking place between the mind, the brain, and the genes during therapeutic hypnosis. As you can see, this figure illustrates a profile of the human brain with a cutout showing details of the hippocampus, which is the part of the brain that first records a memory of what we experience as new and surprising. The hippocampus, however, is only a temporary resting place for recording new memory, learning, and behavior. Later, during so-called offline periods of sleep, dreaming, and rest, when the conscious mind is not actively engaged in coping with outer realities, the hippocampus and the brain engage in a dialogue, as shown by the blue arrows here, to update, replay, and consolidate the new life experience in an adaptive manner. The cortex is considered to be a slow learner, capable of lasting memory storage only as a result of this repeated replaying of information by the hippocampus, and in some views the hippocampus is only a temporary memory store. Once traces become stabilized in the cortex, memory can be accessed even if the hippocampus is removed. There is now direct evidence that some sort of hippocampal replay occurs. These results support the idea that the hippocampus is the fast learner that teaches the slower cortex offline. Before I go on talking about the ultradian rhythm, I would like to remind you what the circadian rhythm is. A circadian rhythm is a roughly 24-hour cycle in the physiological processes of living beings, including plants, animals, fungi, and so on. In a strict sense, circadian rhythms are endogenously generated, although they can be modulated by external cues such as sunlight and temperature. Circadian rhythms are important in determining the sleeping and feeding patterns of all animals, including human beings. There are clear patterns of brain wave activity, hormone production, cell regeneration, and other biological activities linked to this daily cycle. Now, the ultradian rhythm is our natural rhythm of slow wave sleep and REM dreaming, which occur every 90 to 120 minutes. When we are awake, aspects of this 90 to 120 minute cycle are experienced as our natural ultradian basic rest activity cycle, BRAC, also called an ultradian rhythm. Every 90 to 120 minutes throughout the day, we need to take a break wherein we typically feel a natural state of comfort, wherein we experience recovery and healing that Ernest Rossi calls the ultradian healing response. If we don't heed nature's call to rest, we may fall into the ultradian stress response, which leads to chronic stress that is the mind gene source of psychosomatic problems. An intuitive recognition of such mind-body rhythms was a significant source of Erickson's success with psychosomatic dysfunctions. His typical sessions of therapeutic hypnosis lasted 90 to 120 minutes, and this is the time I usually spend with my hypnotherapy clients, as within that time frame, the natural basic rest activity cycle will occur at one stage or another, the deep stage lasting 5 to 20 minutes. And we know that it's most appropriate for coping with the patient's symptoms and problems. It is as if spontaneous healing was taking place. It's important to be able to detect that specific time of deep inner exploration and ultradian regeneration during hypnosis. Within the framework of therapeutic Ericksonian hypnosis, the signs of ultradian regeneration manifest as follows. The person seems to have stopped breathing, or his breathing is hardly noticeable. The person doesn't move anymore, as if in a state of awakened sleep or in very deep relaxation. The face is totally relaxed. There are normal signs of trance, such as eye movements, face expressions, grimaces, sweating, moving fingers or feet, or else. This ultradian resting phase is an ideal time to facilitate and use the healing potential of this ultradian break, and enable the unconscious to proceed to tranquil internal work for 5 to 20 minutes without maintaining a conversation with the person. It is important to know about occurrences of instant healing or spontaneous psychocorporal remissions, which are entirely automatic and that can manifest in any patient during the reflexes of natural ultradian regeneration, which is common to everyone, although everyone has their special unique way to encounter it. This cartoon illustrates a student engaged in proving a mathematical theorem. The first two panels represent stage 1 of the creative process, where the wheels start turning in the mind and the student begins making diagrams and writing equations trying to solve the problem. As is typical of many problem-solving efforts in everyday life, the student soon finds himself in difficulties. He feels stuck in stage 2 of the creative process, when his emotional conflict and despair is evident in the middle panel, humorously showing smoke rising from his overheated brain. Stage 3 of the creative process is illustrated in panel 4 as a flash of light surrounds his head. He is so surprised by his new creative insight that he drops his pencil. Stage 4 of the creative process. is evident as he smiles with happiness with his success and exclaims, "Magic!" Now, the same process occurs during a 90 to 120-minute session of therapeutic hypnosis. The top curve from 1, 2, 3 with numbers 1, 2, 3, 4 correspond to the 4-stage creative process we saw in the cartoon. Here you have a data collection where initiation starts and sensation start. Then you have the arousal time during incubation. There is a review and conflict, negative experience and feelings are being lived through. Then there is the time of crisis, in which period there is inner work and creative replay. Then there is the time of illumination, breakout and insight, positive experience and intuition. And then as the person goes down and out of his trance, there is the time of verification, reintegration and thinking. As you can see in the middle curve of proteomics, this proteomics profile in middle curve depicts the energy landscape for protein folding with neurons of the brain required for brain plasticity. The proteomic profile arises from the functional concordance of co-expressed genes illustrated by the genomics profile below it. This genomics curve represents the actual gene expression profiles of the immediate early gene ciphers and 10 other genes, alleles, over the typical basic rest activity (BRAC) period of 90 to 120 minutes. The lower diagram illustrates how these ultradian dynamics of consciousness are typically experienced as Kleitman's 90 to 120 minutes basic rest activity cycle within the normal circadian cycle of waking and sleeping. Now, just for those who might not know about these scientific terms, genomics is the study of genomes. And the genomes are a full set of chromosomes, all the inheritable traits of an organism. Allele are any of several forms of a gene, usually arising through mutation that are responsible for hereditary variation. Kleitman is the father of modern sleep research. He died in August 1999, aged 104, and he discovered REM sleep and highlighted the importance of ultradian rhythms. Ciphers, in the field of molecular biology and genetics, ciphers is a proto-oncogene that is the human homologue of the retroviral oncogene VIFOs. It encodes a specific protein called 62KDA protein and plays an important role in many cellular functions and has been found to be overexpressed in a variety of cancers. An oncogene is a gene that has the potential to cause cancer. In tumor cells, they are often mutated or expressed at high levels. Most normal cells undergo a programmed form of death, which is called apoptosis. Activated oncogenes can cause the cells designated for apoptosis to survive and proliferate instead. Most oncogenes require an additional step, such as mutations in another gene or environmental factors, such as viral infection, to cause cancer. Since the 1970s, dozens of oncogenes have been identified in human cancer. Many cancer drugs target the proteins encoded by oncogenes. And this is the work we can do in therapeutic hypnosis, working on the proteins and changing the gene expression, which we're going to see later. Here is Ernest Rossi metaphorical healing tree. As you can see here, the leaves represent the mind, thoughts, states of mind, emotions, memories, and behavior. The tree trunk is made of messenger molecules, hormones, growth factors, information substances, etc., which ensure communication between the mind and body. Many of these messenger molecules are going to finally incite our genes, the tree roots, to express themselves using their own personal means, gene expression, in order to favor the growth and healing of each cell of our mind and body. This whole process is represented in a more detailed and complex way in the next diagram, showing the communication loop between mind, body, and genes going through the ultradian pulsations of the molecular messengers which encode memory, learnings, and behaviors linked to the state at a cell gene level. Here is a more detailed diagram and a bigger diagram. As you can see, in this area, number 1, information from the outside world encoded in the neurons of the cerebral cortex of the brain is transformed within the limbic hypothalamus pituitary system into the messenger molecules that travel through the bloodstream to signal receptors on cells of the brain and body. In this number 2 area, you can see that the receptors on the surface of cells transmit the signal via second messengers to the nucleus of the cell, where immediate early genes signal other target genes to transcribe their code into messenger RNAs. In this area, number 3, you can see that the messenger RNAs serve as blueprints for the synthesis of proteins that will function as the ultimate healing structure of the body, the enzyme to facilitate energy dynamics, and receptors and messenger molecules for the informational dynamics of the cell. In this number 4 area, you can see that the messenger molecules function as a type of molecular memory that can evoke the state-dependent memory, learning, and behavior in the neural networks of the brain, illustrated as the rectangular array of letters A to L on top. Genes express a DNA code to make proteins that are molecular machines that can carry out the physical healing in mind-body therapy. Now I would like to give you some corroborative scientific data. I will start with the latest findings about in neurosciences about the brain and the mirror neurons, brain plasticity, and brain imagery. It's very important to know all these data to be able to transmit some of these very important data to our clients who have got very severe diseases like cancer and other psychosomatic illnesses, to make them understand and give them hope that it's possible by changing our mind or by working with our mind in a certain way, in a positive way, to change the state of our bodies. Mirror neurons were discovered in 1996 by Italian neurologist Giacomo Rizzolatti. It is a mechanism by which our brain, since birth, mimes actions it sees being accomplished by others, as if these actions were its own, or it mimes itself imagining a sensation or action which generates the same neuronal activity as if living through the experience as such. That's how probably Milton Erickson operated when he was paralyzed at age 17 after his polio attack. He used to watch his little sister crawling on the ground, and he used to imagine that the same muscles that he could see moving his little sister as she was moving one leg or another, crawling on the ground, would move in his own body, and sometimes he felt that this muscle actually had moved, and that's how he did for a couple of years until he managed to walk again. So by miming or imagining a sensation or action which generates the same neuronal activity, it is possible to make something change in our bodies in a positive way. Secondly, our brain is social and we couldn't develop without each other. Very important. We need each other to develop our brain, and we need support as well to heal. Brain plasticity, which is the generation of new synapses and neurons, is very important too, and extremely important, because without brain plasticity, no learning would be possible. Our brain works non-stop, day and night, at 100% of its capacity. But only 1% of this activity is cognitive, that is accessible to our conscious mind. 1% is conscious, which is the slow cognitive brain we were talking about, the cortex. Thinking, talking, inventing, deciding or moving is conscious. The remaining 99% are unconscious and constantly working and confirming and reinforcing all our neuronal networks, the subconscious, we would call it. It's very important to know that and to be able to explain such things to people who need explanations. Because in hypnosis, in therapeutic hypnosis, we are going to work with the 99% that are unconscious and not with the 1% that is conscious. And that's why it opens to new avenues. Brain imagery shows different areas of the brain being activated during sleep, relaxation, memorizing a pleasant event, and hypnosis. We know now that just like any sensorial stimulation, physical pain is subject to the influences of attention, anticipation, mental images, and previous conditioning. Moreover, brain imagery shows that the frontal singular areas activated by antalgic treatment, like morphines, or by antalgic stimulation of the cortex, are the same areas as those activated through intervention free of medication, such as hypnosis, which is an important fact to tell our clients who have chronic diseases that are very painful, to give them hope and teach them how to manage their pain better through self-hypnosis. Now over to epigenetics and Bruce Lipton, who you probably all know about. The science, the epigenetics, is the science of how the activities of genes are modulated by their environment. And Bruce H. Lipton has shattered the central dogma, which states that DNA is primacy and that genes determine human behavior. According to the central dogma, which is unidirectional, DNA, the long-term memory of the cell transmitted throughout generations, influence RNA as a transient copy of the DNA molecule. It is the active memory used by the cell as a physical matrix to synthesize proteins. RNA influence proteins, which are the constituent elements of the structure and behavior of the cell. Now, epigenetic research has established that you are not controlled by your genetic makeup. Instead, your perceptions control your biology. And it's a two-way system. Environmental signal influence regulating proteins, which influence DNA, which influence RNA, and then again RNA influence DNA, which influence regulating protein, and which influence environmental signal. It is like Ernest Rossi metaphorical trees. It works both ways, or like the diagram, more complex diagram I showed you before. BHL, Bruce H. Lipton, says that 90% of cancer is not connected to the genes. It is connected to life, to lifestyle, emotions, attitudes, beliefs. Our conscious mind is controlling our biology, and our thoughts and our beliefs determine the behavior and genetics of our cells. We thought the genes were passed on from parents to a child. In fact, it wasn't the genes. It was the way we learned how to live our lives, our parents' education, behavior. By taking our parents' behavior, we get our parents' diseases. We know as well that in spontaneous remission, most people report they have had a profound change of belief, of consciousness, and have let go of the stressors. Another important thing for healing and that can be used in therapeutic hypnosis is that notion of placebo versus nocebo effects. We know that positive feelings, emotions, and thoughts make us feel good and favor healing. Negative feelings, emotions, and thoughts make us feel bad and favor disease. Nocebo. Our brain is making electrical waves. Thinking, consciousness, feelings have a powerful control over our biology, so we should watch out what we're thinking. We are free to make decisions that impact our lives and that of others. Our beliefs can change our biology. We have the power to heal ourselves, increase our feelings of self-worth, and improve our emotional state. To show how much that notion of placebo and nocebo effect is important, I would like to talk about the Japanese scientist Masuri Emoto, who has photographed thousands of water crystals over his many years of research and have showed how words can have an impact on the structure of water. In his book, The Miracles of Water, I'm not absolutely sure of the English title, he shows how water, through the vibration of positive words, can help you open yourself to change and live in a more positive and happy way. In the following picture, you will see the positive or negative vibratory impact on water caused by words. Here you can see that beautiful crystal was formed after hearing the words "Tu es belle," you're beautiful. Here is the same, and here as well. Whereas here, this crystal looks a bit unbalanced and not as beautiful as I heard the words ignored. And so it shows that being ignored has a negative impact on the water, as the word ugly that we've seen here, that's the word ugly that was told to the water, and that gave that crystal. This scientist says that as we are made by 90% of water, so if we talk nicely to the water we drink and to the water that constitute us, then we can heal our bodies. Sending loving words to ourselves create beautiful light, healing light and vibration. It's important to consider our body as a friend and not an enemy, just like it's important, as we are going to see, to consider the symptom as a friend and not as an enemy, as we saw before with Ernest Rossi. So in hypnosis, in therapeutic hypnosis, we can suggest these notions to the patient and ask them to imagine or feel loving light, healing light and vibration spreading through their body and cells, or telling to tell themselves nice, pleasant words that will make them feel good inside, make their cells dance, filled with joy, so to speak. Now here is a mind mapping I've prepared for to talk about what healing involves. I will be talking about the three conditions that Carl Jung used to talk about for healing. He used to say that the first condition for healing is awareness, being aware there's something wrong. The second condition is action, doing something about it. And third condition is perseverance. It means not give up, keep on trying, keep on doing whatever we do to heal. What I would like to add is that before being able to get into action, it's necessary to be willing to heal and to decide to heal, because without decision, you can be willing for ages to heal, but once you decide to do something about it, it manifests into concrete actions. To become aware of what's wrong, many things are possible: scientific data, medical expertise, epigenetics, nocebo, placebo effects, brain imagery, neurosciences, and hypnotherapy, of course, and any psychotherapy, any form of help by a professional. And within hypnotherapy, either conventional hypnosis, Ericksonian hypnosis, or modern Ericksonian hypnosis and psychobiology of mind-body healing can be used. An important thing I'm soon going to talk about is biological decoding and what can be done and how things can be accelerated in the awareness of what's wrong and to be able to get into action to do something about it. Of course, action means change as well. Change in lifestyle, change in habits, food, environment, language, thoughts, belief, getting rid of toxic relationship, activities, sport, relaxation, meditation. Healing involves hope. Healing involves making choices, setting priorities, getting support and respect. So, as I was saying just a minute ago, Carl Jung's three conditions for healing were awareness, becoming aware of what's wrong, or that's something wrong, action, doing something about it, perseverance, repetition, and time. Now I'll be talking about biological decoding. Dr. Philippe Dranzard is a GP in France and a homeopathy doctor who has written several books on the subject, and that I find very interesting to use with my clients who are very ill. In biological decoding, illness is considered as a system of survival, inviting the ill person to evolve. It is the biological and symbolic solutions of an organism faced with a problem that the person doesn't know how to solve. The nature of the illness depends on the nature of the feeling at the time of the traumatic event. Illness is a reversible process. When one heals, it is through the resolution of the problem. Finding the original feeling and overcoming or resolving the conflict makes illness become useless. The brain will make it disappear. In therapeutic hypnosis, one has access to all the unlimited resources of the subconscious, to all the memories that can help the person who is ready to evolve and grow and trigger their own self-healing. A conflict can have several aspects, several feelings, and when the essential aspects are being dealt with, healing can be total. The chronicity of an illness can be due to the fact that the ill person is confronted again with the same problem that caused the disease. Its resolution was not sufficient, or else the person develops new little conflicts because of the disease. Given our old culture about disease, when the crisis is here, with all the pain, we tend to lose patience and interpret the phenomenon negatively. We are soon in conflict with our own disease. The fear of not healing can prevent from healing. With the generally unbearable physical pain comes the psychological pain. Because of all that, the ill person struggles to heal. However, the brain will inactivate the illness just as it made it appear. Man can induce self-healing and from victim become an actor of their wellness. Once its mystery is unveiled, illness ceases to frighten. Since it is a solution to a problem, it has value. Illness is the surest way to reach our inner self. And Dr. Philippe Dranzard uses 7 questions on the way to healing. All these questions can be brought up during hypnotic trance. The first question is, what is my body trying to tell me? What am I feeling? Where do I feel this? And since when? The second question is, did illness come as a solution to the problem? What contradictions am I faced with? Do I have to make a choice? What am I refusing? What do I disagree with? Why am I still suffering from that past event? Am I guilty? Am I a victim? What judgment do I suffer from? What am I afraid of? What do I need to defend? What do I really want what do I really want deep inside myself? In therapeutic hypnosis, 7 metaphorical ways can be used to explore these questions and lead to new understandings, avenues, solutions, and healing. Healing involves environment. If the place we live in has a negative impact, it's important to move out of that place and live in a healthier environment. We need to change our habits, lifestyle, thoughts, negative patterns of thinking, of language, unhealthy food, our belief system, our activities, sport, relaxation, meditation. We need to make choices. We need to set priorities, and we need to avoid or get rid of toxic relationships. We know now about the effects of the brain information or the cerebral cell on the cells of the body. A specialist doctor in France says that new information can change and correct things and lead to healing as long as, first, the mind is capable of thinking positively, second, the environment of the cell which will receive the information is free of toxins-related problems such as unhealthy food, electromagnetic waves, smoking, medication through side effects due to chemical synthesis. The body needs to eliminate the products of synthesis, which means having to produce extra energy, which won't improve the natural, harmonious cellular environment. Any toxic problems can become aggravated by the brain when it produces negative thoughts, given that the brain transforms thoughts into chemical components, such as stress hormones, that will reach the bloodstream and transform the destiny of our cells. We know now with epigenetics that the destiny of cells is determined by the environment which controls our lives, and that it's not the cells that control the environment. The human being is a community of cells, of 50 trillion of cells. There are many ways to develop positive thinking. Firstly, one needs to manage one's stresses. Relaxation techniques, sport if possible, meditation are efficient ways to feel better in our minds and bodies. Talking about the meditation, you probably know about that excellent book written by Australian Dr. Ramesh Manocha, MD, entitled Silence Your Mind, in which he gives a very simple way to meditate 10 minutes a day, and in which he supports the benefits of meditation with scientific research. Healing involves support from family and friends, colleagues, from doctors and therapists. Healing involves respect and trust. No personal interpretation or judgment, no minimizing. Being sick makes people very vulnerable. Positive beliefs, placebo words, and boosting hope. Keeping hope is extremely important for the patient to heal. Believing in one's therapy as a therapist is extremely important. Believing in one's therapist is important. Trust in one's therapist. And most of all, trust in one's own potential in self-healing. Personally, I think that the therapist or hypnotherapist is not responsible for the results, but he is responsible for the process that leads to results via change, self-healing abilities, implementing activities that will help, and so on. I also think that any therapist should be knowledgeable enough to be able to transmit some very important data to the patient in order to boost his hopes in the possibility of healing. Erickson used to say that attempting to directly program people without understanding their individuality was a very uninformed way of doing therapy. He believed that it's not what the therapist says that's important as much as what the patient does with what the therapist says. In therapeutic hypnosis, it is the patient's own creative activity that evokes activity-dependent gene expression, brain and behavioral plasticity, and the so-called miracles of mind-body healing. So, to conclude about therapeutic hypnosis. During therapeutic hypnosis, an entire cycle of mind-body communication and healing takes about 90 to 120 minutes. Psychotherapeutic experiences can turn on genes and brain plasticity in a single session. Gene expression and brain plasticity are the physical basis of our natural transformation of mind, consciousness, and behavior. Healing involves being willing and decide to make some changes, keep hope, self-respect, support, and positive thoughts. As a therapeutic hypnotherapist, responsibility involves keeping up with latest scientific evidence in order to share it with patients and give them more hope and confidence in their own healing possibilities. In the PDF version of this PowerPoint presentation, you will find references, interesting references that I based my presentation on. Among them, the new neuroscience of psychotherapy, therapeutic hypnosis and rehabilitation, a creative dialogue with our genes from Ernest Rossi and Catherine Rossi. The psychobiology of mind-body healing, the new concepts of therapeutic hypnosis by Ernest Rossi. Sacred spaces and places in healing dreams, gene expression and brain growth and rehabilitation, an article by Ernest Rossi about his own experience of recovering from a stroke. The biology of belief and spontaneous evolution by Bruce H. Lipton. There are two different books, very interesting, enriching books. Illness is Trying to Cure Me. Well, it's a French book, so for those who can't read French, it will be difficult to read it because there's no English translation, I think. The 7th question on the healing way, what I was talking about in this presentation. The Miracle of Water, I'm not sure of the title, by Dr. Masuri Emoto. And some French books written by French neurologists, which have not been yet translated into English. Your brain will never stop astonishing you. And my own article written in the Australian Hypnotherapy Association newsletter of April 2013 entitled Ericksonian Hypnosis and Healing. Well, now I'm going to talk about some specific case stories that are encountered in my practice as a Ericksonian hypnotherapist in Réunion. I will be talking about 2 cases of cancer and 1 case of Guillain Barre Syndrome. The first case is a very positive case, positive story. The second case is not so positive, third case is positive as well, so it's better to end up with a positive story. It's just to show you something positive and something not positive, to show you and let you draw conclusion about what might have happened, not happened, to have this result. The first person is Mr. that I'll call BP, 60 years old, business manager. He made an appointment with me in August 2012 for a weight problem. He had to lose 20 kilos. And by the time he came to see me, he had just found out about cancer lesions in the right area of his throat and had to undertake surgery. During our first session, he says he lives constantly at a crazy speed, works 12 hours a day, including weekends, as he finds this very thrilling, and his main value is to respect his commitments. He takes 3 weeks holidays per year to go skiing in France with his family. His main beliefs are that he's only efficient when he's speeding, and that the subconscious is everything that prevents him from doing the things he should be doing. He's very reluctant to communicate, and getting this info from him takes a very long time during our first session. He doesn't like changing his habits in everyday life as it deeply disturbs him. He is constantly thinking, lost in his thoughts, even when driving his motorbike, and never feels any peace of mind. The cancer lesions were discovered on the very day his ex-wife was buried. She died from cancer. His ex-wife had left him about 35 years ago, with 2 kids to look after, aged 2 and 4. She left him for another man and went to live in Madagascar. She kept coming to Réunion for surgery for various cancer lesions she developed over the years, and used to see her children during those times. By the way, before Mr. BP came to see me, I saw his son before the ex-wife died, who was deeply affected by his mother's behavior and actually sent me his father to help him out. So, coming back to Mr. BP, he remarried and had other children with his new wife. During this first session, Mr. BP finally told me that his main priorities in life were: first, his family, wife and kids; second, his work; third, his leisure time once a year, and sometimes, very rarely, on the weekend. We had a short hypnosis session during which he went into the ultradian regeneration phase. He undertook surgery. Everything went all right, except for the fact that exams showed other cancerous cells under his tongue. When I see him the second time, he has noticed that he has been making some little changes and is seriously considering finding someone to take over from him at work. We have a second hypnosis session during which he goes through a 20-minute phase of ultradian regeneration. The next time we meet, he tells me that the specialists were very surprised that further exams no longer showed the cancerous cells they had found under his tongue. Mr. BP says, "It was like a flash of lightning, of eureka in my mind, and I felt confident I would heal." His order of priority has now changed. His health is number 1 priority, and he has subcontracted some of his work to have more time on his hands. He has even refused some contracts. Work is now his third priority after his family. He can feel some little things are changing at an unconscious level. He feels drawn to doing things like making appointments with an osteopath and dentist, things he has kept postponing for years. He has even bought a book on Ericksonian hypnosis he reads whenever he's free between 2 examinations. He is soon to undertake radiotherapy and some chemotherapy as well. He has decided to retire from work earlier than expected and keep doing whatever it takes to heal. He also has changed his bad eating habits and now eats more fruits and veggies. We did regular hypnosis sessions for about 6 months and he never felt any pain from radiotherapy despite the burns and didn't lose his hair. The only problem he encountered for a couple of months was mouth ulcers that prevented him from eating, so they had to put a feeding tube in his stomach. He did lose his extra 20 kilos, but not the way he expected. Just before I left Reunion to come to Sydney, I heard some great news from his daughter-in-law who said he is sound and well and enjoys every bit of life. The only thing she says that hasn't changed much, according to her, is his reluctance to communicate about his feelings. And now over to the second case, which is not such a happy ending story. Mrs. I.E., 48, comes to see me. When she first comes to see me at the beginning of September 2011, she has been living in Reunion for a year. She tells me they have found a new cancerous lump in her left breast, the one she had surgery on for the same reason in January the same year. At the time of the first operation, she had linked this cancer to the guilt she felt towards her daughter for having divorced and prevented her from having a family. She was never happy in her 20 years of marriage. Her husband used to be unfaithful. She often thought of Patrick, a man she had always been in love with, an impossible story. She thought that her cancer started to form 10 years before that, when she had a miscarriage, left Paris and her job so that her daughter could be closer to her grandparents. She had always been in contact with Patrick until then. As long as she knew where he lived, she felt okay. And then one day she could no longer find him in the telephone directory, and she was worn down by grief. Now that new lump had to be removed, she didn't want to go through chemotherapy and lose her hair. She was very frightened of that. During this first session, I detected the following nocebo beliefs. She said, "I can't imagine my life without Patrick. I doubt I can heal from this man if it doesn't come back in my life. What prevents me from healing is not being with him. Patrick is my cancer, and his zodiac sign is Cancer. If I'm happy meaning with him, I will heal." We did hypnosis, after which she felt better physically and emotionally. On our second appointment, she told me she had decided to postpone surgery and do otherwise, as she felt that the lump was linked to the biopsy they had performed and that the real problem was that impossible love story. She had found Patrick again in February 2011, and she was suffering from the fact that the two people she loved most were far away from her. Her daughter, soon to be 15, who wouldn't accept her disease, and Patrick, who wanted to keep his freedom. Patrick is a man I should have married 25 years ago. It's with him that I should have had that second child I lost. Since 2010, she had this obsession about having a child with him. Whenever they saw each other, it was total fusion, just like 25 years ago. He makes me suffer through his silence. We are soulmates. I don't understand why he won't come and live with me. We are alike. He's the one who convinced me to come to Reunion and start a new life. She felt a lot of frustration and resentment and anger faced with his non-commitment and lack of decision-making. She said she had thought of dying in spring but decided to stay for her daughter. After the hypnosis session, she told me she was determined to heal and felt she no longer needed hypnosis. So I let her go, and I never saw her again. But sadly, a year later, I found out from an acquaintance of hers that she had died from cancer in a hospital in France 1 year later. So I would like to comment on this case and add some data from a biological decoding perspective. It is considered that breast pathology conveys a sense of failure to be a woman or mother. As we all know, breast is a symbol of femininity and maternity. Breast cancer, like many cancers, express deep sadness and sorrow, as well as total disinterest in life, consciously or unconsciously. It can occur after marriage failure or treason, or result from a deep sense of guilt towards the child or one's own mother, guilt from having seen one's own mother suffer, and which can be revived through a problem with a child and a sense of failure for not being a good mother, or through emotional pain in marriage or relationships with a sense of being abandoned. In conventional medicine, it is commonly said that cancer comes from mutant cells, and according to this hypothesis, it will take about 5 years for the cell to multiply and show as visible tumor. However, it actually takes from 2 to 12 months between the time of the emotional shock and the discovery of a breast tumor. Often a breast tumor will develop from a benign lump detected and watched closely for many years, which leads to saying that cancer does not result from the mutation of one only cell, but from a group of cells. Now I'm going to end with a more positive story, which is that of that young lady, Miss BB, 35, suffering from Guillain Barre Syndrome. So for those who don't know what it is an uncommon, usually self-limited form of polyneuritis occurring after a viral illness or immunization, and manifested by loss of muscle strength, loss of or altered sensation, and sometimes paralysis. So Miss BB came to see me about a couple of years ago, or 3 years ago, I'm not sure. And when she came to see me, she told me her health deteriorated over the past 6 years after undergoing anesthesia to remove all her back teeth. One arm went paralyzed and she vomited for several hours. Shortly after arriving in Reunion, through her work transfer, she has to be hospitalized again, and this is when they discover she has the Guillain Barre Syndrome. She has no autoimmune pathology, she tells me, but terrible pains in her hands, wrists, forearms, and all along her spine. She describes her syndrome like having locks everywhere. She says, "I'm locked all over. I am a handicapped person in the working world, just like my little sister who limps is because of work." Her aim is to stop suffering and feel less upset by her work situation. During the first hypnosis, she releases a lot of anger linked to her grandmother that used to put her down when she was little. Then she releases a lot of sadness and cries, after which she feels more peaceful and less painful. On the second appointment, I use her nocebo beliefs through a metaphorical story in which a person explores 6 doors representing NLP logical levels of change in a house, and as she manages to unlock each door, she discovers new pleasant things, solutions, strategies, and so on. Her pain had totally disappeared after this session. She told me later on, months later, that she had changed her food habits as well as was doing she had changed her food habits as well and was doing regular exercise like swimming and walking. That helped greatly. She also looked at things in a more detached way at work. And so I'm very pleased that we have got about 20 minutes left for me to do a demo if you're interested. And if you're interested, I would like someone in the room, in the audience, that have got some medical problem or pain to come over to do a short demo in therapeutic hypnosis. Thank you for your patience in listening to my somewhat struggling English way of presenting all this data to you. Thank you very much to all of you for being so patient.